Every time this gentleman comes in, I am reminded that I should be exercising. I am reminded that I should also go to the barber every 2 minutes because he always has this clean look on his face. I think you do this deliberately.
No. That is...
I am talking about Senator the Honourable Clarence Rambharat, Minister of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries. Sir, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this Sunday morning.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Very happy to be here.
I'm always happy when you're here. And by the way, our listeners, reminding you that those who are having trouble picking us up this morning, this interview will be available on our website, YouTube, as from tomorrow. And you will not only get to hear the minister, but see him. However, there are a number of issues that I asked him in for this morning, and I am so thankful that he is here. The president of the National Cocoa Allied Farmers Association, Mr. Minister, his name, he was vice president at the time. He was Oscar Cadet. He alleged last year that more than 1,700 cocoa farmers across the country have difficulty getting access to international buyers as the new cocoa board failed to set up mechanism for export. He said the problem started in 2015 with the last administration when they abolished the Cocoa and Coffee Industry Board. There are about 15,000 small farmers, he says. If each of them employ 4 people, you're looking at an average of 6,000 jobs that can be created. Could you give us an update on this situation, please?
Well, when Mr. Cadet, and let me just say we have a proliferation of these organizations and entities. So when Mr. Cadet made his pronouncement in the media, I challenged them right away. In fact, he said 4,000 jobs were lost at the time. I've said a lot about that transition. We had a regime in place, a statutory regime to deal with cocoa and coffee. And the growers, the producers never interfaced with the international market. It was all done through the Cocoa and Coffee Industry Board. They sold to local agents in their communities, and the Cocoa and Coffee Board consolidated and then exported. When the last administration took a decision to close the board down, what they did is that in a finance bill, there was one line which repealed the Cocoa and Coffee Industry Board Act. And that removed a regime that had existed for about 6 decades and left nothing in place. At the same time, or not long after, Cocoa Development Company was incorporated and a board was appointed. And without a legislative regime in place, you can't, there was no, the board was not compelled to buy local cocoa. Coffee was not addressed in the transition. There was no transition. The board was not compelled. There were bills that remained to be paid from the previous regime, and cocoa was piling up at a warehouse in the Caroni area.
Yeah, Ron, I remember last year we had you for that discussion.
Right. So we've moved on. The cocoa board still does not have legislative power, but agents have appeared. People who previously worked as agents under the previous buying regime have structured themselves as agents to buy cocoa.
All of this is on the free market, nothing to do with the
free
government.
Market.
Yes, okay.
And then we've seen the development of a few new cooperatives and the growth of some which existed before. I hold the Montserrat Cocoa Farmers Cooperative as a model for a few reasons. One is the Rainforest Alliance certification that they were able to get last year. The Rainforest Alliance certification is well regarded in the international community. It is a signal of sustainable farming practices, and I was happy to see that being awarded. Montserrat also created history. I think it's 3 weeks ago we had a World Intellectual Property Organization workshop in Trinidad, and I was able to present the Montserrat cocoa farmers with their certification. It's the first, what we call a geographic indicator. What it says is that the name Montserrat is now protected internationally, and it cannot be used in cocoa and in chocolate products. It's just like champagne. The name champagne comes from a particular region in France where the grapes are grown. So the only product that could be described as champagne is the product that comes from that region. Montserrat will now be able to use the name, and it will identify to international buyers that it comes from that part of Grand Couvé Estate in Trinidad where the Montserrat farmers operate. And that is something, it was done with the local intellectual property office. It was done with the support of WIPO, the international organization. It's something that we have to engage in, particularly with pepper. We lost the opportunity, for example, of the Maruga scorpion and the previous, world-class peppers that we have. And I've been talking about that. It's not just, as a previous minister said, it's not pumpkin and bhaji alone. There's a lot of intellectual work that has to be done in the ministry, a lot of strategic work, legislative and policy-oriented work. And this is something that has to be built. It's not a switch that you turn on. What we've had is that we've had a period where the ministry was low on the pecking order in terms of how it's viewed by the public and how it's viewed by the politicians. And what I've done is to expose the ministry in its broadest form, so that people understand that on my instrument of appointment, there are 52 areas that the president has given me responsibility for. And what I've done is that I keep that in the left drawer of my desk. And I've taken the ministry through the pieces from agriculture to the zoo, A to Z, and everything in between. So now people understand that the ministry has a role in the environment in terms of wildlife protection, conservation, garbage, rivers, streams, the ocean, the beaches, a lot of soft areas, the Queen's Park Savannah, Palmies Park, the San Fernando Hill, the Aripo Savannah, and the hard areas, the fishing facilities, the construction work that we do. If you go in the Botanic Gardens, I was just there this morning on my morning walk. It took a long time to get that project of rebuilding, of converting the huts which have been there for 20 years into more family-friendly gazebos. It's a project that I considered personal to me, and it was also something that MP for the area, Stuart Young, has been driving. And I'm happy to see the four have been covered, and they're doing the tile work in the rain this morning, and I was there driving them for the half an hour that I was there. And that is important infrastructure work, but it is consistent with my view of the ministry as being a ministry that supports not only farmers, but families in the country.
I like the fact that you passed it when you do an exercise. A friend of mine used to call that presence coercion.
Well,
just the fact that you're in the area, they go like...
I've been hearing, even up to last night, I was on the avenue and people were saying to me, but you're not walking again. And I reminded them, as I remind people, I'm a part-time resident of Port of Spain, so you see me around the Savannah and up Chancellor and so on. It's actually my job to be there.
Yeah, I hear that.
So I combine the two. But when you don't see me, I'm in my constituency in Mayaro, I'm in Palmies Park, and I'm around the country. Wherever I go, I include my walking routine.
But I always like, and since my friend defined it for me, I always stole what he said, because presence coercion is a wonderful thing. Just the fact that you know the minister is wrong somewhere, get off your butt.
Well, it shouldn't be,
but unfortunately.
But people in the ministry know that I push doors unannounced, because when they know you're coming,
then everything is straight.
The whitewash
Coke
comes
and curry,
out,
yes.
the this, the that, and they corral you into what they...
take you where they want to take you, show you the nice side. And,
not that I want to surprise people, but I like...
Yes, you do.
I like seeing it from the point of view of the public.
Yes, you like surprising them. Okay. The recent Export TT showed great international interest, just to conclude this area of cocoa. So you are encouraged by what you're hearing.
One of the things that has really been encouraging is there's a lot work to be done in cocoa, but I think we have a good board in the Cocoa Development Company. In fact, they work me hard because it's a performing agency. They always have some advice or something happening, and it would take a lot of time to build that modern infrastructure to support cocoa. But what really has made me pleased with in the recent weeks is not only that Grand Couva Estate is nominated among the persons being considered for the International Cocoa Award this year. They have consistently been nominated, and they've won several times. The little station in Rio Claro, the Ecclesville station of the ministry, has also been nominated, and that is very significant because that is the work of public servants. We have Roger Polaya, we have Roger Pulaya, who was with the Cocoa and Coffee Industry Board. We have Kamal Umaraj. We have the person who's in charge of the station up there, Florencia Beckles, and the regular working staff of the ministry who have been able to produce cocoa on the station, which is up for an international award, and it sends a very important signal to all the small farmers. And Ecclesville is a particularly interesting area because it has a long history in cocoa. They have formed a cocoa cooperative in Ecclesville, and it's an area where I've said that I would like to pursue also another geographic indicator because of the long history. The other interesting part of cocoa in Ecclesville is that you have cocoa growing and you have the shadow benny at the bottom, the cocoa fields. So they have two streams of income coming out of
going at the same time. Senator, the Honourable Clarence Rambharat, Minister of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries, is my guest this morning. You mentioned something just in passing a moment ago. Part of the responsibility is to see how land is excavated, developed, and so on, because particularly when you look at what's happening in Texas, just to make that reference because of the climate, because of conditions, because this is the wet season. Yeah. If we're not careful how we treat with our land and the way people develop on them, then we're going to have all the topsoil removed. We're going to have a lot of what's happening there in terms of flood happening here in greater magnitude than we have seen before.
Yeah, but part of it, if you look at the city, because in both the botanic gardens and the zoo, in the that major project that is underway in the zoo, we paid close attention to water flow, because the water comes down from Chancellor, and it is science. It comes down, the flow has to be managed. It will eventually end up as part of the water table in the savannah, and it will eventually end up downtown.
Yes.
And it creates a problem, and that has to do with, we're looking at it closely from an engineering point of view. If water doesn't merge, you need to have separate channels that allows water. So if water is flowing from one direction and you have water coming perpendicular to that, you would have a backup and you'll have flooding. So we've looked closely with the president of the zoo, Gupti Lakshmi Dayal, and his team. They've been looking at the water coming down from Chancellor into the savannah. We've been looking at the water flow in the savannah. But when we manage our runoff on that end, you create a problem lower down. And the major problem, I'm not an expert, but the major problem downtown is the fact that when the tide is up, the water that gets downtown has no way to flow.
Now, you're not an engineer, but you made a very nice point inside of there. You all should take note of water does not merge.
It doesn't. It has to be.
It's not going to seamlessly.
It has to be encouraged.
Exactly.
Especially when it's perpendicular.
Exactly. We're talking with the minister this morning. The desecration of the national bird continues to continue, unfortunately, seemingly unabated until I believe his whole social media campaign came in. That is not to say that your ministry has not been working on it before, but the social media campaign came in where folks are looking at the destruction of the national bird, and then you got people sensitive to it. I'm sure that added impetus, and I didn't say it created a reason, I'm saying it added impetus to what has been going on all the time, the moves to secure our national bird. I was particularly dumbfounded when I heard $1,000. And then when I heard it's been increased 100-fold, then I was truly encouraged.
Well, you know what? People have short memories, unfortunately. So every time an issue comes up, it's almost you start at the start because people are saying you should do this, and I encourage people to follow my Facebook page and follow what we're doing, because a lot of the work, as you rightly said, has been done. Recently, I was in the media talking a lot about law enforcement and making the point that I think in terms of the units we have, we are second to the Ministry of National Security. And as minister, I do have a certain amount of law enforcement responsibilities in the ministry. And some of it has to be done very confidentially and quietly. Some of the work has to be done quietly because of what is involved. In the Scarlet Ibis, let me just say that in fairness to the people who are making comments, not all the information is correct. And I'll say one thing. A lot of people don't know that area where the boats, when you go into the Caroni Bird Sanctuary to view the scarlet ibis, a lot of people don't know that is just a very small part of what is in the swamp. In fact, in that area, and I plan to have one of the tour operators, Mr. Kalpu, come on the radio and the television stations and explain to people in the way they have explained to me over the last 2 years. That area represents really the males who have not found a mate and the females who are no longer nesting, because if the scarlet ibis has a particular limit in terms of how often they produce eggs, and there's a point in which they're not producing anymore. But the real population of the scarlet ibis could be seen in other parts of the country, and in the swamp they are in the nesting area. So this is the nesting period. I have video I have seen. In fact, this is my third consecutive day going down to the swamp. I was there Friday looking at one aspect. I was there yesterday for several hours looking at another aspect, and I'm going today to look at a third part of the work. And this is my time down there today would be the 14th or 15th time I've been there as a minister. So in the nesting area, there's a considerable amount of ibis. And the other thing is that the ibis really doesn't belong to us. It comes from somewhere else. And they come into Trinidad and they go to the River swamp, and then they come to the Caroni Bird Sanctuary mainly for feeding and for nesting. And so the numbers will vary, but I would tell you, yes, I'm concerned. We could have millions and millions of ibis, and this has nothing to do with the decline in population. This has to do with a principle that it is, one, the national bird.
Yes.
Two, it is a beautiful species. And the Caroni Bird Sanctuary, when I came in as minister, keep in mind that my father worked on a significant project in the Caroni Bird Sanctuary, which was to oversee the construction of the boardwalk in the sanctuary, which the people who go in there and cook, they have ripped it out board by board, leaving absolutely nothing for people to walk on anymore. I think it is one of the most magnificent things we have to offer to citizens and to visitors, and it's very important that it be preserved. I also said back then, and I don't think that the bird sanctuary should be under political management. I think it should be placed in a trust. There is work going on with the FAO to put the Caroni Bird Sanctuary, Trinity Hills in Guayaguayari, Matura, where we have the turtle nesting, and the River Swamp, 4 sites in Trinidad, and Main Ridge, and another site in Tobago, under appropriate long-term management involving the community.
The FAO,
the FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization.
Okay.
It's a 4-year project, and we're 2 years into it. And that is the direction I would like to see. Part of what we're doing in the swamp now, I'm going to Cabinet to re-establish the Caroni Bird Sanctuary Management Committee, again, taking the direct responsibility away from the ministry and sharing it among agencies. And on this issue of the ibis, there's several ministries that have worked with the Ministry of Agriculture. We have Ministry of Planning and Development, Ministry of Works, Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, Ministry of Tourism, Ministry of National Security, and we've had the agencies, the EMA, the IMA, the Chaguaramas Development Authority, Sawa Lavental Regional Corporation. So it is not a ministry-specific responsibility. But I don't think, I'm not worried about the numbers. I'm worried about the attitudes, and that is something that is I understand that culturally people may have done certain things in the past, but it is not, we're not that hungry in the country, and if you're looking for something to consume in the sanctuary, there are other things you could consume. There's shellfish in the sanctuary, and this work that is being done on the ibis could expand, because I'm not just looking at the ibis. Every year as we look at the conservation of wildlife legislation, I've been looking very closely at birds. We have a lot of migratory birds coming to Trinidad. during the period, in the November period. And at the same time, we have a hunting season for birds.
Right.
And I'm looking very, very closely at what is listed there. The appropriate consultations will be held. But I will tell you this, that I'm minded to make changes to the regime for the hunting of birds in Trinidad.
Then I look forward to that. Just briefly, you mentioned that while I raised my hand in applauding the $100,000, it is not yet.
There is a process, but we've crossed the main hurdle. The main hurdle is while the request had been made, and the main hurdle is that the EMA has given it priority. So there is a process where the public will be invited to come. So they will formally initiate it, invite public comment for a period of 30 days, and then they would do what they have to do to declare it. And then the environmentally sensitive area is a far more long-term. It has significant implications. There would be consultations. Depending on what you do, we refer to the Caroni Lagoon, we refer to the mangrove, we refer to the protected area, the non-protected area, we refer to the Caroni Swamp, the Caroni Bird Sanctuary. The ESA forces us to define geographically what we're talking about. And I am looking for the widest possible area for protection. I would say that would have impact for people who earn a livelihood in that area. But in environmentally sensitive areas, you can continue to use it as a source of livelihood. It is there, in fact, to protect people who use it for a source of livelihood. But it has to be done in a sustainable way. The other part about having an ESA is automatically the resources of the EMA are brought into the picture. So, for example, the EMA has patrol boats. They have a police unit that could be used to assist us in the sanctuary.
EMA is the Environmental Management
Authority. I think that the Caroni Bird Sanctuary represents. I was there yesterday for several hours. Every time I go, in fact, I think I read somewhere yesterday in the Trinidad Express, somebody was saying that they believe drones should be used in the sanctuary. And my response to that is that, we're about 6 months into that. And it is another element that I did not want to disclose until I had to. But in fact, Friday I was there for several hours with Syed Ali from the Serpentarium and Gupti Lakshmi Dayal from the Zoological Society to look at a specific piece of equipment that would enhance our
surveillance
in the swamp. I was pleased with what I saw. In fact, I'm going to share some footage with the country during the course of the day. And we have been exploring it, not just for the sanctuary. We've been exploring it for other public spaces, the savannah, the zoo, Palmies Park, and other areas. I think that we have to move in a modern and sensible direction. We cannot rely on people. I was in the Botanic Gardens this morning, for example, and people walking around with a bateau is not going to help us. You have to be mobile, you have to be quick, and you have to have back office support in the form.
At the end of the day, the technology is there. With the surveillance technology is there, where you can zoom in, you can catch people, you can see faces, you can get times, you can have still shots, you can put out pictures, lots of things you can do. You have automatic alerting going on, immediate alerting. So a whole lot of things technology you can work with. The Honourable Senator Clarence Rambharat is my guest here this morning. Got to watch the time, but I need to find out about this 200,000 citrus plants. You said it is reported that you said it's valued at about $5 million is what is going to be lost to the country because of this. What is it? I guess
it's a disease, and it's a disease that flattened the Florida citrus industry. A lot of people don't realize that because Florida, the proud Florida citrus juices are actually now juices that are imported. And Florida has spent 10 years battling citrus greening, for which there is no pesticide or
what exactly is citrus greening?
It's a disease that turns the leaves yellow. and kills the plant and the productive capacity of the plant. We picked it up on a private farm in Trinidad. Thankfully, we have in the country Dr. John Allen, who is a former ministry employee and somebody who has worked extensively in Florida. He now serves as agriculture advisor to the Prime Minister. He works with the ministry and with the THA, and part of his expertise is on citrus. And I was very, very reluctant to have to destroy, because as you know, we ramped up the ministry's capacity to produce plants. And this year, the 200,000 that we had available was going to make a significant impact to the citrus farmers. But again, based on advice, it's what we have to do. And the 5 million represents the what we would have revenue if we had sold, but actually the cost of producing a plant is more than $100. But this is the right thing to do. The experts have said that to me, and we've moved to destroy the trees. We've been exploring. In fact, the ministry had been preparing for this for a while in terms of the base plant that is used for the budding and grafting. There was a time when we felt that there was one that was going to be resistant. We stopped going in that direction, and I've asked them to restart and head in that direction to see if we could get something that is resistant
to this citrus greening. It does raise the question, Mr. Minister. It does raise the question: how can one control or monitor the transfer of something like this citrus greening coming into Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, on the bright side, one of my peeves before was the trouble to get planting material into the country. Now, on the one hand, I support local planting material, and you may have read recently where I was expressing, joy with the fact that the Chaguaramas project, where we produce local seeds, is back on stream. I mean, I had some angry moments down there on previous visits, and it took me visit number 8 to express how happy I was to see the project is back on stream. So I support that. People want local pigeon peas and pepper and melangen and okra and other things. But I also support the importation of material and the importation of plants. For example, we've tried to produce coconut plants, and we have not been able to produce it in the volume we should be producing it. And even if you have it, there are other varieties you may want to introduce into the country. The local farmers have complained about this slow pace, in fact no pace in being able to, but we've made some really tremendous strides, and we're on the verge of opening up the importation of coconut plants into the country. And we will use that work to allow other material to come in. Now, there's always a risk in importation. But what has happened before, like, for example, recently somebody gave me some local dates to sample. And the seeds came in somebody's pocket or in somebody's suitcase. And it's a fact that our locals on the whole, they go to Canada, they go to New York, they go to Europe, they see something they like, they take a piece, they take a seed, they bring it in. And that of course introduces a lot of risk. So, but by opening
be one of the channels.
Yeah, that is certainly the way it came in. It is the way it will come in. The importation, the illegal activity out of Venezuela into southwest Trinidad. In terms of sheep, right now I'm dealing with an issue with sheep that is being smuggled in. Foot and mouth disease is something we have avoided in this country. It decimated Brazil and has caused a lot of problems for Brazil in terms of its ability to export meat products, and we do not want that in the country. So it's a balancing act of wanting to, but I believe that the illegal movement of planting material is caused by the ministry's inability to allow people to do it on a risk managed.
The sneaking will at least be reduced if folks feel that in fact they can legitimately bring scenes into other areas. The Honourable Minister is with me. I just have to keep stealing as much as I can from him because he hits the news pretty often because he's in a lot of places on a lot of things. When I hear a cartel, normally my eyes immediately my ear go up. So when I heard you talking about a market cartel, it raised the interest to me of folks who are in fact monopolizing the positioning of those who are trying to make a living in the markets. Explain that to me and what is being done about it.
I am out all the time, and for people who see me, they know that I go a lot of times alone because I want to engage, like farmers. I go on farm holdings by myself, and I'm followed by technical people after. So I've been talking to the people who sell in the DB wholesale market and in Macoya. And from the outset, the word cartel came up. So in DB, they talked to me about 6 people who come with bags of money and take control of the market and tell people who can sell where and who can do what and so on. And when I worked with the NAMDEVCO board to find the solution, I worked with them on DB and in Macoya. And in Macoya, there are other issues with the farmers having to park up from 1 o'clock in the morning to get a space in the market. And when they get in, and my farmers from Rio Claro and throughout Mayaro tell me, they tell me all the time. And when they come in, the spots are already taken. And part of it is expanding the space. That is one. In DB, you have cars and vegetables mixing up and people parking where they're selling and all of that. And part of it is to expand. So what we launch in DB is the creation of another 60,000 square feet of space at a cost of $8.5 million. And that will allow us to separate vehicles from produce and vendors. Secondly, when you create more space, you're able to improve your lighting and also use the technology to monitor behaviors in the market. And I was saddened to see in DB the conditions under which meat and fish is being sold down there. I've been around the country talking about food safety and health safety and so on. And we've also launched a separate program to modernize that area in which meat and fish is being sold. So that would bring relief. It's a 5-month project that would bring relief, and I will continue to keep my eyes on it. And then, having done all of that, again, work with law enforcement to ensure that we have discipline in those markets.
And that these cartels don't exist.
Yes,
I mean, because there's no way they can be legal.
No, farmers must find space to sell. It's a battle I fight all the time. I'll tell you a little bit about it. And in Macoya, we also need more space. So that is a $5 million project that is going to expand space. And even when I turned this out recently, I said that I have to move into the next phase, which is further expansion on the eastern and southern side. We've had a high court matter with residents from that area around the Macoya market talking about parking on the roadway and blocking their driveways and so on. That project will deal with that. But in Macoya, for example, Macoya is a wholesale market, the Norris Devnarine wholesale market. Retail is not supposed to take place there, but we have retailers, and people want me to exclude the retailers, and I've said no food producer should be left out. We have to manage it. We have to find a way. I gave NAMDEVCO board 1 week to give me a plan. We have to manage it. I'm not going to lock out farmers from spaces. I'm going to lock out cartels and criminals from spaces. And the farmers market is doing fabulous. In fact, I had to battle the ministry employees because I told the farmers, I said, I want you to go to that new building in Chaguanas before anybody else comes there. And when the ministry started its move in July, we're substantially there. There's a battle between the farmers and the employees for car park space. And in my mind, the farmers have won. I have said to the employees, you have Monday to Thursday to park in those spaces. And on Friday, you would park in a different area so that the farmers take over from Friday into Saturday.
Well, the good thing about it is where this one is in Chaguanas, you've got land at the back of the building.
Well, we've already
so you can do some clearing out there.
I have already done that. I have commissioned NAMDEVCO to to create an additional space at the back. And because I always said any minister of agriculture, and I've been saying recently, I think I'm preparing a ministry for another minister, in the sense that not that I'm saying that this takes a while to do, but I'm trying to fix it so that other ministers would have less to do. But I always believe that, it was a tremendous thing for a Minister of Agriculture to look out the window and see farmers selling and to see fields being cultivated and so on. And that is what we'll see in Chaguanas. And I think that the farmers should be fully integrated into the work of the ministry.
Unquestionably wonderful optics, but it also works to make sense that the ministry is in the area where the farmers are.
It's done tremendous. I'll give you an example. There's a fellow in Rio Claro calling himself the Kale King. I estimate he has about 5 acres under kale. He's supplying the supermarkets and all of that. And one day I was at his home and I was speaking to him and I said, so you take kale to the supermarkets Monday to Friday. What do you do on a Saturday? And he says, nothing. And I said, there's a farmer's market waiting for kale. And recently I heard him say he's doing better the farmer's market than his Monday to Friday sales. And that is what happens at the farmer's market. A lot of people are happy to directly support farmers, to know where their food is coming from, and to have a relationship with the producers of their food.
It would not hurt anybody to take a drive down to Chaguanas on every other Saturday morning.
Yeah, well, Chaguanas is every Saturday.
It's every Saturday, see?
It's every other.
I got 3 minutes with you, Mr. Minister, and that 3 minutes I want to move into the area of the agricultural sector plan.
Well, we have...
How far are we with this?
When I came in, I said, we have plans going back to 2003. And what I'm doing is that I am implementing the things that should have been done for the last 20 or so years. At the same time, we've been working to craft a plan that doesn't have an end date. And it's not just an agriculture sector plan. We've developed plans for fisheries sector, we've developed plans for livestock, separate plans and an overarching plan. So a lot of that work is substantially done. I don't think that publishing a plan will be a magic one. The work has been we do moving as though we have that plan, simply because a lot of it was written before. In fact, I've spoken about a 2003 plan in which UE was involved, and there were 42 recommendations in that plan. And if I had to sit today and write 42 recommendations, it would be the same recommendations.
Yes,
but there are aspects that the priorities have changed in terms of the impact of climate change, in terms of the linkage with health and wellness and nutrition, and the emphasis in terms of the need for more agro-processing and a closer relationship with the farmers. Those things need to be given priority. But I'm not too caught up with the work. The work is there. It's substantially done, and a lot of legislative drafting has been done in support of the work policy and all of that. But the main thing today remains to me the land tenure. And again, I've seen substantial progress, but not enough closure on matters. There are a lot of cabinet notes in draft, and I'm really hoping. I've been talking to the leadership of the ministry. I set aside July and August to clear the way for substantial work in land tenure in terms of the issuance of the leases.
We have the fortune, sir, of always having you most of the time, as long as your schedule permit, having you acquiesce to come into us. We have met with you many times and will continue to do that many times because you control the food basket of the nation. In addition to that, there are many other areas, as you said, that your ministry overlap into.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw the invitation for you to come back with us.
Sure.
And
I don't control. The farmers control the food production. They control me.
Well, you manage. How is that?
I serve them. And before
said.
I go off, let me tell you, I always bring something for you.
I'm always fortunate to have it, yes.
And I love pepper sauce.
That looks hot.
And this is one that I was introduced to by the owner of Bloom Imports. Even though the name is Bloom Imports, it's one of the places that I've been saying has a substantial amount of local value-added agriculture products. And Blazer's homemade pepper sauce has become one of my favorites, alongside my regulars, Bertie's habanero, and the one from Goodwill Industries. But Blazer's is one that I would like you to try.
It looks hot.
I'm not advertising for anybody, but I'm saying that it is a representation of what this has been produced by a lady living in I believe Paramin or somewhere around there, and it represents the best of what Trinidad and Tobago could do as a country.
Fantastic. Mr. Minister, thank you for the pepper.
Thank
you for the information. And again, thank you for allowing us to call on you often. And as I said, we will continue to do that because there are ongoing issues when we speak of sustainability, when we talk about our food import bill, when we talk about the use of our agricultural land, when we talk about these comfort leases. There are so many angles, so many aspects of it that are to be covered. It truly is elucidating to have you here on a Sunday morning. Thank you so much for taking the time.